All right, today is May 31st, 2019. My name is Jason Higgins. I'm a Ph.D. candidate in American History at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm outside of Philadelphia today. I'm at the home of Mr. Gregory
Nini.
Nini. This interview is part of the Incarcerated Veterans Oral History Project. Mr. Nini, thank you for joining me today and for your willingness to share your story.
My pleasure.
Before we get started, I just want to make sure I have your permission to record the interview.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. And we'll start with some brief biographical information. When and where were you born?
I was born in Philadelphia in 1946, December 9th to be specific. December 9th of 46 I was born.
And which branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the Army.
First Cavalry?
I was with the 1st Air Cavalry Division when I was overseas. I was in Vietnam. I was in the service for 2 years from May of 1966 to May of 1968.
And you did 1 year, 12 months?
I did, yeah. I did 6 months in the States. I did my basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And I did my infantry training at a place called Fort Polk, Louisiana. That took 6 months, and I did a year in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and 6 more months in the States at Fort Meade, Maryland.
Did you serve in a combat zone?
Yes, I did. I served as a combat infantry soldier with the 1st Air Cavalry Division in Vietnam. My MOS was 11B10.
Any medals that you care to mention?
The basic medals, nothing, air combination medal, sharpshooters medal, but nothing like no Purple Hearts or Silver Stars or any things like that. The awards, the medals that were issued to all combat soldiers that went to Vietnam.
Sure. So you were not wounded?
I was not wounded.
Good.
That's very good, yes.
Have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD?
Yes, I have. I've had care at the VA Medical Center in Philadelphia, which is at 39th and Woodland, and I have been diagnosed with PTSD, yes.
And you have access to counseling services?
Yes, I do. They do a very good job down there. I know they receive a lot of criticism. I would say that I believe that I feel as though the system is overwhelmed, but the doctors that I deal with, the PhDs, the doctors, the MDs, the psychiatrists, psychologists, I think they're very professional, and they do a very good job. As overwhelmed as they are, there are a lot of veterans, unfortunately, that need care.
And have you ever been incarcerated?
I have not. I have not. Never. Well, let me correct that. I did have a DUI in 2012, and I was in fact incarcerated for 24 hours.
And that was what led you to veteran treatment court?
Yes, that by virtue of that, I ended up going to Veterans Court, which is at the Criminal Justice Building at 13th and Filbert in Philadelphia. I had never heard of it before, but it was a real lifesaver for me. It took about a year to 18 months of doing some stuff, but in the end, it was a very good thing.
Thank you for that. So let's take a step back. Who were your parents?
My parents, my mother's name was Ann O'Brien. I was born and raised I was born in 1946. I was raised in the Frankfurt section of Philadelphia. My father was from Beaumont, Texas. It was a classic military story. He was at Pearl Harbor in the early 40s, and she was living in the Frankfurt section, and she was single. My mom was single at that time, and he came home from Pearl Harbor, and he got stationed at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. They didn't know each other, and they met one night in Center City, Philadelphia, and the story went on from there. And about 9-10 months later, here comes my sister Michaeline, and then a year later, here comes me, and the kids started. And then, unfortunately, my father left, so he was gone. I never knew him. He was gone when I was a little baby. So my mother really raised us. Never had a father.
Do you know much of that family history at all?
Actually, we did find out a little bit. And again, that was 1946. In 1996, 50 years later, we met that family. My real father had passed away, long passed away. but with me and my sister, we flew to Houston, Texas, to meet my real father's surviving one sister and two brothers. One sister and two brothers. We met them again when I was 50 years old. So it's quite an emotional story. They drove us from Houston's airport to Beaumont, Texas, and showed us his cemetery plot where he was buried.
So he was in the Navy during.
He was in the Navy. World War II was at Pearl Harbor.
Was he at Pearl Harbor?
He was at Pearl Harbor during the attack.
Wow. Do you know which ship he was on?
No, I do not. I do not. I knew very, very, very little about him. I found out some things over. I happen to have a couple of pictures of him now that I got when I was 50 years old, which his family gave to me. I do have a couple of pictures of him, but I never met him, never knew him.
On your mother's side, was there any history of family in the military? Did she know?
Not really. No, nothing major. No, not on my mother's side. She had a couple sisters and two brothers and two sisters, but no military background.
What did she do for a living?
She did not work. My mom. She had a difficult life with men, difficult life with very, very heavy smoker, very, very heavy drinker. She just had a brutally tough life. She died. She was only 60 years old when she passed away in 1983. Yeah, she was going. And the sad part is, I hate to say it that way, but it was the best thing that could happen. She just had a brutally tough life with men. They always had difficulty with men, heavy smoker and heavy drinker.
How did that environment impact you?
Well, it was tough. It was very tough. Never having a father was very difficult. She did a good job raising us, as good as she could. We went to Catholic school, but there was never a man around the house. And when you're kids can be unconsciously cruel. All the kids always saying, like, where's your daddy? Where's your dad? And all this. And you don't know what to say. That was tough. And then, of course, she got remarried. I guess I was about 12 or 13 by then. So now I'm well grown up. But then this guy was bad news. The guy she married was bad. Abusive. He beat us up, and so it went from bad to worse. And it was brutally. This was when I was going to high school. When I went to a Catholic school in Philadelphia, Father Judge High School. This was during that period. So it was those high school years were kind of brutal.
Father Judge.
Father Judge High School is an all boys Catholic school in the Mayfair section of Philadelphia.
Can you tell me a little bit of background about that high school? That there were 27.
Yes, relative to the war in Vietnam, they had the unfortunate distinction of having 27 of their students were killed in Vietnam. That is the most of any Catholic school in the country. To be tied with another school in Philadelphia is Cardinal Doherty High School. They also had 27, which is quite amazing that each school would have 27. Doherty also had the one Medal of Honor winner from Philadelphia was a young man named Michael Crescens. So Doherty had 27, Father Judge had 27. And on that note, the most of any school in America is, Thomas Edison High School had 64. That's the most of any school in America. So the city of Philadelphia paid a shattering price for not that the entire country didn't, but there were an inordinate number of young men killed in Vietnam from the city of Philadelphia.
Were you aware of that at the time?
No, not really. No, when I was over there, I did. When I came back, of course, I knew how many there wasn't. It was bad, but when I was over there, I didn't know. The communications just weren't there like it is nowadays. There were no cell phones, and there was no newspapers, and out in the jungle.
I don't want to get too far ahead, but did that create a sense of survivor's guilt for you?
Absolutely, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, survivor's guilt is a big issue with. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't know about other best. It was always a big issue for me. How I ever got out of there, I could never imagine. I always felt bad going there. Again, I told a little bit about my childhood, and then my stepfather was very abusive and beat the crap out of us, and then we would Then I said, and then I go to Vietnam. I said, oh, this kid's really doing on a great pace. Let's send him off to Vietnam. But and then to get infantry, how I ever got the 11B10 infantry, I mean, I just that hurt, that crushed me.
So in high school, did you play sports?
Intramural sports. I was a decent athlete. At least I thought I was. But I went to a very, very big school. We graduated 969 boys in 1965. There were 4,000 boys in our school, of which 12 made the varsity basketball team. So you had to be pretty good.
That helped you stay out of trouble?
Yeah, sports was great. Sports definitely kept me out of trouble. When we got home from school in the afternoon, that's the first thing we did. We put on the sneakers and the Madras shorts and the Converse sneakers, and we were down the park playing ball. It's all we did: baseball, football.
I don't know how anyone played sports in Converse sneakers. They're terrible. They're so flat.
Yeah, but well, the Boston Celtics wore them when they had all their championship years. Yeah, but
Bird, right?
yeah. If he can wear them, I can wear them. Sure. But now sports was great. Sports was we loved sports. Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough to play at the high school level, very big high school. But we played a lot of sports.
Did you also work?
I had a newspaper route when I was in high school. That gave me a little bit of spending money. Not a lot, but I had some spending money.
You have your own car?
No car. That was not an option. No, there was no. Again, there wasn't a lot of. My stepfather was around at that time. It was tough enough just getting. My mother never worked, so it was tough enough just getting food on the table or trying to get the dances back then. We were big into going to the dances on Friday nights. You used to go see $1. You'd have to work pretty hard to get that $1. So having money was not an option, or getting the $6 to buy those Converse sneakers was like that was rough. You had to do some hustling or do some chores around the house to earn that, get that $6.
And you were the oldest?
No, my sister Michaeline was about 18 or 19 months older than me. She was born in July of 45. I was born in December of 46.
So you got your draft letter in the mail. Did you graduate from high school?
Yes, I graduated from high school in June of 1965. I graduated from Father Judge. Unfortunately, also college was not an option. Hindsight being 2020, I probably should have worked harder. I did okay in high school. I was a B to C student in that ball. I could have got good, but we were never geared towards going to college. I don't want to blame my mother and stepfather for not sending me to college, but in the end, I probably did because all my buddies ended up going to college, and I got them out of the draft.
But it wasn't expected, right?
No, it wasn't expected. No, I mean, I could have gone. I didn't apply. The parents, the mindset that I was always raised with from my mother and my stepfathers: get a job, bring your paycheck home, and we'll give you some spending money out of your paycheck. That was their mindset. But little did they know that when I got my when I got my first job in June of 1968, after I came out of July of 65, after I came out of high school, that I was going to get drafted the following May. So they only got paychecks from mid 1965 till May of 1966, and I was gone for a couple of years. So
you would have been about 15 or 16 when JFK was shot.
Yes, I would have been 63. I would have been a sophomore in high school.
Do you remember that?
I remember like it was this morning.
Being Catholic,
that was a Friday afternoon, about 1:00 or so. I was in Mr. O'Neill's English class, and the priest walked in. Father Janzor was a religion teacher, and he was always a comical kind of guy, real funny, always telling jokes. And he walked into our class and he said, "Excuse me to Mr. O'Neill, but I have some sad news." He says, "The president of the United States has been shot." And half the class starts laughing because he always told jokes. And you never thought, we thought that stuff ended with Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, presidents don't get shot. And then he yelled out real loud, "Gentlemen, I'm serious." And here he was serious. So that was a Friday afternoon. And then they closed the school. And I was walking home. I remember it like it was this morning. I was walking down Cottman Avenue in the Mayfair section of the city. All the girls were coming out of the girls' school. Everybody was crying. My mom was hanging wash out in the yard. And I said to her, "Mom, is this true? The president got shot?" No, it was. I remember it very well. That was one of the saddest well, for many, many moons, I said it was the worst day in history. But now it's, in my mind, it's been superseded, if that's the right word, by 911. That was even worse. But it was a bad day that Friday when the president got killed. Very bad day.
I can only imagine. I mean, I remember not, of course.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that was even worse. The worst mistake those people made was going to work that day. That was terrible.
So in 1965, whenever you graduated, had you even heard of Vietnam?
Yes, I had heard of it. I never thought I'd get there in 1966. I can tell you that. But yes, I had heard of it. I had one or two of my buddies that had gone, were already in a certain little bit. Couple of the local guys in the neighborhood that were older than me. They were there or on their way there, but I didn't know too much about it. I mean, back then we just worried about getting our homework done, playing ball, and going out with the girls on Friday nights at the local dances. We didn't.
Whenever you were drafted, did you carry with you that sense of, not asking what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country? Was it patriotic? Or?
I was pretty patriotic. I wasn't gung ho. I felt this sense that I guess I come from a school that says everybody should give 2 years. Now, I'm not saying everybody should have to go to a war zone and be an infantry soldier, but only a small percentage of people that go in or make the front lines or the battlefield, if you will. It takes the other 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 guys to support that infantry guy, to fly his helicopters, to do the artillery, to cook his food, and to do everything. But I did have a sense of pride, maybe not to the extent that the way President Kennedy said it, but I felt as though I owed the country 2 years, and I was willing to do what they told me to do, and I did do that. Now, do I wish they would have maybe made the job a little easier, maybe not made me infantry? Maybe they could have done that, but yes, I did feel that way. That I had that sense of pride, and you owe the country 2 years and do what you're told to do and be done with it. Yes.
At what point were you designated as combat infantry?
When I had my basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. The day that we graduated, a platoon was 30 guys, 4 platoons was a company. There was 120 guys in our company. Roughly 10 of those guys out of 120, they were announcing your name, congratulating you, and they gave you your next duty station. And I'm standing there, and I was like, what job? How come there's only like 8 or 10 of us left here? And what are we, the last? They must be saving the best for last. And I'll never forget the captain says, you last 8 or 10 guys, you got the low end of the bad straw, if you will. He said, you're going to a place called Tigerland. Tigerland is located in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and you're going to have infantry training. You'll be there for about 8 or 9 weeks. You're going to get 30 days leave, and you're going to Vietnam. It was very plain and very simple, and I was shocked. I went back to the barracks. I started crying. Not so much, a little bit of fear of infantry. You hear about this stuff. I mean, and it's scary. But I was mostly worried about my mom. I knew she would be a basket case. She was already a mess because I was in the service. But when she found out that I was infantry and going to Vietnam, I said, "Oh man, that might be enough to push her over the edge." But so it was difficult to get that. So that's how I found out that I was going to be in the infantry, when I got my orders to go to Fort Polk, Louisiana.
What was it like whenever you arrived in Fort Polk?
It was like hell on wheels, but it was a lot better than Vietnam. It was very hot there. I was there in July and August of 1966. It was ungodly hot. I must excuse me. I must say that it was as far as training to go to Southeast Asia. It was a good place to be. As far as heat, humidity, it was terribly ungodly hot. And they would tell us that the only guarantee that they can make us is when we had training sessions, and we had a lot of night training sessions, the bullets that they fired at us would be blanks. He said the only guarantee is when you go to Vietnam, there won't be any blanks. The bullets will all be real. He said the only other thing we're going to tell you is in Vietnam there's 100 kinds of snakes. 99 of them are deadly poisonous, and the 100th one eats you alive. He said that. So he said, if you don't like snakes, you don't really want to go to Vietnam. But and I needless to say, I don't like snakes. But it wasn't that bad over there as far as snakes go in Vietnam. But it was very, very hot, and it was tough. It was a good place to train as far as going to Southeast Asia at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
What were race relations like, either in training or in Fort Polk or even in Vietnam?
Race with the other troops, with the other soldiers.
Yeah.
Not a major issue. There were some issues. I wasn't, where I was born and raised, it was almost all white kids. When I went to Father Judge, excuse me, there were 4,000 boys there, and I think there might have been maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 blacks tops. So it wasn't a big issue to me. When I went into service, when I was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, there was a lot more, and when I went to Fort Polk, there was a pretty good fair amount, but it wasn't an issue. In Vietnam, excuse me. In Vietnam, it didn't matter over there. I didn't care if they were black, white, skinny, fat. It didn't matter. If they had my back, I had their back. And I would say that 99.9% of the cases, that was the case. That was the case. It was not an issue. It wasn't an issue to me. I slept with them, slept on top of them, saw them die right in front of my eyes. It was not a big issue. I'll tell the one incident that I did. Again, I was from the Philadelphia area. It was not a big issue. I think the race stuff was much more of an issue down south, which I had no clue about down south. But I did go down south when I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and they let us have a weekend pass one time, and we were going to a bar in Atlanta, and I don't know anything about Atlanta, and I'll be very frank about this. A sign on the door said no niggers allowed. Now these were so. Of course, I see this, and I'm with about 3 or 4 white guys. We're looking to have some fun, have some beers. So I ripped the sign off the door. I said, I can't believe somebody wrote that. Well, the bouncer comes down. And I thought he was going to rip my face off. He was dead serious, and I didn't know this was down south, and this was the kind of stuff they put on the doors, on the bars, like, and that's what it said. No, it didn't say blacks or Negroes. It said niggers allowed. So I ripped it off the door. I thought they were going to kill me. So that was the first time in my life. I was 19 years old. I ever saw that race relations firsthand. That was my first incident with it, and I was shocked. I didn't realize how much they did dislike them down south. But I'd never been down south in my life.
So, at what point did you become airborne? I'm sorry, not airborne. First Cavalry.
When I went to actually, they established that organization. The first Cav went to Vietnam, and they were the first full infantry division that went to Southeast Asia in 1965. I went there,
Cavalry, right?
first Air Cavalry Division, yes. I went there in 1966, so the guys that I went with were the first replacements. But we knew when we trained at Fort Polk, Louisiana, they told us that when we got to Vietnam, we were going to be with the first Air Cavalry Division.
So that means like search and destroy operations, helicopter assaults.
Yes, the main purpose of an air mobile outfit, the big asset they had in Vietnam was the helicopters, and we were located at Camp Ratcliffe, which is the home base of An Khe in Vietnam, and it was in the Central Highlands. So it was very, very mountainous. So walking, well, we did vast majority of walking, but you had the ability to fly. So, for example, when we left Camp Ratcliffe on our first mission, they flew us to a certain area, and then after that, you just walk. You might walk for 2 days, you might walk for 6 days, you might walk for 30 days, and you just sleep on the ground. And then if they need you to go far away, and they know it's going to take you a couple of days, then they'll bring the helicopters to get you and take you someplace else. So you could get from point A to point B quickly. But for the most part, they would drop you off, and you went on local missions here, there, and everywhere for the next week, 2 weeks, month, 60 days. There was no guarantee that you were you were coming back to the base area to, it wasn't like, unless you got injured, unless you got hurt. And if you had a toothache, they would take you back for one day, and then you get your tooth fixed and come back out again.
What was it like showing up in Vietnam?
I'm sorry?
What was it like arriving in Vietnam?
Arriving in Vietnam was, I arrived at, I left Fort Dix over in New Jersey, McGuire Air Force Base. We flew to Anchorage, Alaska, and then we flew to Tokyo, Japan, and then we flew to Saigon. And we landed got there very late. It was like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning, and they just let us. There was no more planes coming in. That's good. Because they had cots on the. We slept on cots on the runway of the airport. So we made the guy promises. You sure there's no more planes coming in? And I had this was my first night, so they had just a cot there with no pillow, and it had a mosquito net on it. Well, I said, I don't need the mosquito. I don't feel any mosquitoes. Well, I didn't get too much sleep because I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't. The artillery was all going out, but you couldn't tell me that. I didn't know whether it was coming or going, and so you hear all of a sudden you're hearing noises and bombs going off, but not that we were getting bombs. Just noisy. Mostly artillery, not bombs. And so I didn't use the mosquito net. Well, when I get up in the morning, I had lumps all over me. Then we went to breakfast, and they had something like goat milk. They don't have like we would think of vitamin D whole milk. So I'm eating a cup of cereal with goat milk, and that didn't go over very good with my system. Now I got the runs. I said, this is great. I've been in country about 10 hours. I got my body's one big lump, and I got the runs already. But and then it got worse from there. But that was my first day. But it was a little shaky. We stayed at the airport there for about 10, 12 hours, and then they put us on a C-130, and they flew us down to Ankei. And then you get all your clothing and your weapon and all kinds of introductory stuff like that. And they tell you what you're going to be doing. And you go on missions right outside of Ankei, which is a pretty safe area as far as Vietnam goes. So that the first week or 10 days, we would just go on local missions to get used to the terrain and the walking field and this and that. And so you're doing missions, but there's a real good shot that you're not going to see any enemy right outside of the base of Ankei.
So it's a way to acclimate.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to try to get water in your system. You're going to lose a lot of weight. When I went to Vietnam, I weighed 164 pounds. When I came home, I only weighed 126 pounds. So I had a tremendous weight loss. But they tell you carry as much water as you can possibly carry, but there's certain times when you run out of it and you're up on the top of a mountain and there's just no water around. So you just deal with it somehow, some way. But
so I've read a lot about these types of missions that you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
The helicopter lands in the hot zone,
Mm-hmm.
you go off, and you're gone for 3 days, a week, a month,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. But for someone who doesn't know about those types of missions, could you describe one? Is there one particular mission that comes to mind?
Yeah. There's a mission could be. You obviously, if you're going to an assigned area, you're coming into an LZ, which is LZ stands for landing zone. You don't want that to be hot. It's going to be hot as far as the Americans are going to be firing. The helicopter door gunners are going to be firing no matter what. What they don't want is getting fired back at before the planes have even gotten on the ground. So you want to the helicopter pilots want to get as close to the ground as possible. Now there may be a realistic number. Could be they would have a platoon of 30 guys would be going on a certain mission. So you'd have 6 guys. Each helicopter could carry roughly 6 guys, 2 door gunners, and 2 pilots. So 10 people tops. You can't. It's a weight issue. So you got 6 guys. So you have roughly 7 helicopters coming in to a landing zone, and they're maybe about a half a block or a block away from each other. So they're not right on top of each other. So the first guy will come in, he'll get within 10 feet of the ground. By then, they want you jumping out. They want you, you can't be jumping out at 20, 30 feet. You got a lot of military radio. I had a radio. I was a radio operator, so I had a heavy 22-pound radio on my back and all kinds of other stuff. But anyhow, the first 6 guys would jump out, and then hopefully there was no fire. You weren't getting fired at. So then you get a security area, and you may stay there the rest of that day and the night, and then the next morning you start walking. You have a certain area that you're going to. You might be on a search and destroy mission. Usually the captain, well, at the platoon level, you'll have a lieutenant in charge. At the company level, which is 120 guys, 4 platoons, you'll have a captain in charge. This will be with the lieutenant. So we had 30 guys. And depending on what our mission would be, we may walk from 7 o'clock the next morning till 6 o'clock at night. Hopefully we'll get to a relatively secure area where they can bring us food or bring us dinner if they can. They try very, very hard to get helicopters out from Anke to bring food. We had food with us in case of an emergency, sea rations, but you try not to have to eat the sea rations unless it's absolutely necessary. But they worked very, very, very hard to get us food and water.
So the platoon size, like 30 people.
30 guys.
Did you train with these people, or did you integrate into that?
I integrated into it. When I trained at Fort Polk, the guys that I went to Vietnam with, they all went to the 1st Cav, but some went to this outfit. I was in the 5th Battalion of the 7th Cavalry. Some guys went to the 1st Battalion of the 12th Cavalry. So they all went 1st Cav, but they didn't all go with me. So there were a couple that I did stay with me through Fort Polk and on to Vietnam. But most of the guys went to the 1st Cav, but to different organizations within the 1st Cavalry Division.
Did you have anyone take you under their wing?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I did. A guy that I met, his name was Harry Marion, Marion. He was not with me at Fort Polk. He got there. I'm not sure where he did his infantry training at, but he was already in Vietnam when I got there. So when I infiltrated into a platoon of which he was a part of, and I was only 19. He was a little bit older. He was about 23, 22, 23. But that's a big difference. That's like when you have a 10-year-old kid versus a 14-year-old kid. That's a big difference. A 6-year-old kid versus a 10-year-old kid. A 19-year-old versus a 22 or 23. It was a big difference. And he helped me a lot. He gave me some good advice on this, on how to try to sleep at night, to get some sleep when you can't sleep at all. A lot of different little things. Unfortunately, he died on January 14th. He was killed, so that was the end of that. That was very sad. No, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Okay. He was, I'll tell you. Harry Marion was from Los Gatos, California. We were on a long range patrol, what they call an LRRP, long range reconnaissance patrol. And it was Saturday morning, January 14th, 1967. And there was only 5 of us. There was a sergeant. There was Harry Marion, who was a corporal. And there were three of us that were PFCs. I had been in country since October 26th. This was January 14th, so I'm about 90 days in country. Again, it was a Saturday morning, and they took us to the top of a mountain. Now, there was already a company of Americans there, so we were very safe at that. They hit us in the outskirts of the top of the hill, and the objective was for us to ambush. The Americans were going to leave at about 10 o'clock. The whole company. So all these helicopters, all kinds of noise coming over at 10 o'clock. Now the whole company's gone. And now there's only 5 of us left. And we're there to ambush the Viet Cong when they come up to get the food, bullets, and God knows what the Americans might have left behind. That was the game plan. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work that way. While we were there, they ambushed us. So we were hit at about, I would say it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, on a Saturday morning. And the sergeant was killed, the sergeant was shot 3 times in the side. and Harry was killed instantly. There was saw 5. I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he was shot right in the face and the chest, right in front of me. That was really upsetting because it's actually the first time I had ever seen anybody killed right in front of me. I'd seen guys die before, but never seen anybody killed right in front of me. And the bullet came from behind me and hit him in the chest and the face. But so that was really brutal. Now there's only 3 of us left. There's only 3 left. Now you don't know whether it's a squad of hardcore North Vietnamese soldiers or Viet Cong, or is it local mountain yards that are local people that live in the jungle that are supportive of the Viet Cong. So we don't know what it is. So anyhow, the firefight lasted probably, I'll say 5-7 minutes. And mind you, there's only 3 of us left. Three guys, 5 rifles. Each guy has 300. We only had 1,500 rounds of ammunition, a couple hand grenades. So it was nasty. But our saving grace was, as we find out, or at least we believe, that it was the people that hit us with the sneak attack were local mountain yards. It was not hardcore. If it was hardcore NVA, they just would have walked up on a mountain over us and cut our heads off. It would have been that easy. But we were told in the end it was local mountain yards. At any rate, I crawled over to Harry, and I mean there was blood coming out of his mouth, and it was bad. I don't. He looked like he was dead to me, but unfortunately we couldn't get, since we were able to get. They did have our back at K, our main base. They had our coordinates, so they knew where we were since we were on an ambush. So they were able to get artillery fire all around us. And then we called in an airstrike, so that the Stratus Fortress bombers were able to drop napalm bombs all over the place, and so. But meanwhile, while all this is going on, the helicopters can't come in to get Harry and the wounded. The sergeant that was wounded, and Harry who's dead, get him out of there. So that probably took. Unfortunately, it was probably almost 45 minutes to an hour before that could happen. By the time the airstrike was gone, because they can't come in the middle of an airstrike. So the whole thing was a mess, and it was very, very upsetting. Again, because I had never, not only the fact that it was him, but I had never seen anybody. I'd never seen combat on my doorstep like that close. It was very difficult.
How did you cope with that while you were still in Vietnam?
The best I could say about that, it was upsetting. What they did do, the lieutenant or the general would come out with his little helicopter. This is another hour later when everything was safe and sound, and he asked us what happened. Now, mind you, this guy's a general. Probably I don't know how many years he was in the service, but at that point he was telling us a wrong 19-year-old, and I said some things. He was telling me that I didn't do a very good job on the radio. I did a good job getting the airstrike, but I cursed too much on the radio, and I had never called in an airstrike before, and I didn't. Never seen a day guy before, a good buddy of mine like that. So I said a lot of things on the radio that I should not have said. I guess you could basically say I lost it, and I guess I did, but wasn't real upset about it. I did I felt like I did what I had to do to survive, and I was just glad that I was alive. But anyhow, they did give us, if you had what they called a serious stress situation, they sent us back to K for like 2 days. They gave us 2 days out of the field. So I thought that was nice. And we went back to K for a couple of days, but then you have to get back on the helicopter and go back, But it was, and one of the big problems there too, we only had 5 guys. Misery loves company. When you're in a combat situation with a platoon, you have 30 guys. When you have 4 platoons, you have a company, you have 120 guys. You have plenty of machine guns, plenty of grenade launchers. So when you have 5 guys and one gets killed and one gets shot, that's 40% of you only have 60% of your operation left. And then you have 3 PFC rookies that have only been in country for 60 to 90 days. So it was that was probably my worst day ever in Vietnam. There was a lot of bad ones, but that was January 14th of '67 was I would say I would earmark as my worst day.
How long did it take before you could talk about that?
Actually, we didn't talk about it over there. In Vietnam, we didn't talk about it, especially guys dying and stuff like that. Yeah, but and when I came home, it was a long time. I didn't talk about nothing when I came home. But that's a tough one to answer because I just didn't talk about it. Nobody in Vietnam wanted to talk about it. When I came home, I didn't want to talk about it. So it was a difficult one.
Is it still difficult to talk about?
Well, no, it's not now. I've gotten over it for the most part. I've told the story a few times, and I've done some good things in Harry's remembrance over the years. As time has gone by, I've done some good things involving him.
You've mentioned this briefly, that you visited family.
Yes, I met again through the power of the internet. I was able to meet his sister. He had a sister who lived in Florida, and Harry was one of a bunch of kids. Again, this is back in the 60s now when he was killed. And he had a sister whose name was Alma Ruth, Ruth, and Alma and I were able to meet. Well, we met talking. She was looking for someone who was there. She posted this on the internet or somehow. She was looking for someone who was in Vietnam with her brother. They were trying to find somebody who could tell them what happened to her brother, Harry Marion, who was killed on January 14th of 1967. And I saw this. You talk about a small world. I was at my job with Citizens Bank in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, and I saw this. And she gave a phone number. And I didn't know whether I should call her or not. So I put it on the back burner until the next day. And I talked to my sister, Michaeline, who was very, very close to me when I was in Vietnam, very close. And she said to me, Gregory, she said, well, reverse the roles. Let's say you had been killed, meaning me, and I was trying to find somebody. I would want that Harry Marion to call me. So you should call this girl. So I did. I called Alma Ruth, and I by coincidence, I happened to have a couple of pictures of Harry Marion in my album from Vietnam. I took a lot of pictures in Vietnam, but a lot of them got ruined with monsoon season, so very few of them ended up ever getting developed. I lost the cameras. The cameras got ruined with the monsoon season, the rain, but it was a mess. But anyhow, so I said to Alma Ruth, I'm talking to her on my home here, from my home. She's down in Florida. I said, before we do anything at all, I want to do something. I need your address. I'm going to send you 2 pictures of your brother. I have pictures of him, so I want you to know that I'm the real deal. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not a witch hunter. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you BS. And she agreed. And I said, after you see the pictures, if you want to call me, you can call me. So I sent the pictures. Obviously, she wanted to talk to me. She had the pictures all blown up into 8x10s, came to all her family. She was really happy for that. So she said to me, she said, Greg, she said she offered to fly me to Palm Beach, to Florida, to meet her, to tell her what happened to her brother. And I agreed to do that. So I said, but you don't have to pay my way. I'll pay my own way. The fact of the matter is, I took my wife with me. We have a cousin that lived in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. So we made a vacation out of it. But one day, Alma and her husband drove over from the West Coast to the East Coast in Florida, which wasn't too bad. And we did meet. And we had a nice brunch or lunch. And I got to talk to her, and she was ecstatic. And in the end, she said, she said, my brother was killed in 1967. This happened in about 6 years ago, about 2013. She said, my mother and father, or Harry's mother and father, had been dead for many, many years. She said, they would have walked from Los Gatos, California to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where you live, to talk to you, to know what happened to their son, because they went to their graves, never knowing what happened to their son. And it crushed them. But so, and in the end, in what I did while we're talking about Harry, again, he was killed on 1/14/67, on 1/14 of 2017, 2 years ago. I took the 6 ribbons that I had been awarded for military service. I think 3 for military service and 3 for service in Vietnam. And Harry is buried at Golden Gate National Cemetery, which is a national military cemetery in San Bruno, California, outside of San Francisco. And I flew out to San Francisco, and I got an Uber, and I went to Golden Gate National Cemetery. I found his headstone, and I buried my 6 ribbons at the front of it, at the base of his headstone at the cemetery. And that was done. It was a Saturday morning in '67 when he got killed, and it was a Saturday morning on January January 14th of 2017 was also a Saturday morning, 50 years to the day, to commemorate his passing and the friendship I had for him, unfortunately, which was only lasted 90 days. Yes, yes, and his sister, his sister and I still communicate. She, on like Memorial Day, she'll send me a tag, Veterans Day, or something like that. But good stuff.
That provides some type of closure for you.
Yeah, yes, it did. It did. It helped. It helped me. It helped me. I've done fairly well. I think, at least I think I have. A lot of people may not think so, but I've done. I had an event in 2012 when they got me associated with Veterans Court. That's kind of when I opened up. Like I would never wear a hat like this before 2012. Never. You would never know that I was in the military.
You weren't part of any organizations or anything?
No. Now I belong to a VFW. I belong to an American Legion. I don't get overly involved. I go to meetings once in a while. We have a standing agreement. There's no war stories, nothing like that. That's probably one of the reasons I never joined, because I was of the assumption of all they did was talk about war stories and stuff. Well, that's not the case. But in either case, I wouldn't have joined anyhow. I just didn't want anything to do with the military after Vietnam for many years. And when I got associated with Veterans Court, for the wrong reasons, when I had a DUI back in 2012, that's when they sent me to the VA Medical Center to be assessed, and that's how I got involved with the VA.
Is that whenever you were diagnosed with PTSD?
Yes, not shortly thereafter. Yes, I went to the treatment centers down there, and I still go, and I found I deal with veterans down there. I hook up with meetings with veterans that are the only the qualifications you have. You must have been diagnosed with PTSD, and you must have been in the infantry. And I deal with 10 or 11 of them. I don't deal with. I meet with them, and we discuss things. If we want to, we discuss whatever, family life or no life or Vietnam, but it is a good thing. It's been a good healing agent for me, because I never thought there were 11 other people in society that did the same thing as I did in Vietnam, or knew what I went through in Vietnam, or as I would say that there's no event in my 72 years on this planet, not my 72 years on this planet, not the birth of my son, not my wedding day almost 50 years ago to my wife, not the death of my mother, that could change my life or shatter my life or revolutionize my life as the Vietnam War did. Nothing. Not even close.
For someone who might not understand war or even the Vietnam War, how would you describe to someone who's never been there what it's like?
I was going to start out by saying hell, but that's not nearly enough. It's I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I can't. I don't know, because I've never seen anything else like it. I don't know what to compare it to. Uh, the fear, and anybody's they may not want to admit it, but any soldiers or Marines or infantry troops that say that they're not scared, they're lying. Things are done by instinct. You do tend to become hard by it. I found myself, as I got over there, like after Harry marrying, after I saw that, well, now all bets are off. Now I'm a nice guy. Now I'd kill anybody as fast as look at them. The enemy, of course. The enemy.
That changed you.
That changed. Oh, it changed me big time. You start to realize, hey, this is survival now. I got to get out of this place. I got 9 months to go. I was only in country. I got there in October. He got killed in January. I got to go till October. I got a long ways to go. So, and you're scared, and you don't get much leave. If you get real sick, they might let you out for one day. If you need a dentist appointment, that's one day. Everything's one day. You only got 2 R&Rs. I got one out of country R&R, 5 days in Bangkok, Thailand, like a week, 7 days in Bangkok, Thailand, and one in-country R&R to a place down by Cam Ranh Bay. It was called Vung Tau. That was a very safe place on the South China Sea. They'd send you there for like 3 nights. So basically, you get about 10 days vacation in your year, unless you get shot or something. So you don't get a lot of time off.
I hear about charms or superstitions. Did you have any? What charms or superstitions?
Nah, not really. Not too much. I didn't. We couldn't wear dog tags. We had to, because they were shiny or metal. They want the clanging noise or sun would shine on them and stuff like that. So, but I had a little air lane and sea metal, which my sister got me. My sister had me take with me. I had that in my pocket, but I didn't have too many superstitions. I just.
Did you communicate back home regularly?
Yeah, well, as regularly as possible. That was always a big issue over there because the mail was very slow getting there. Again, you didn't have the technology and things that you have today. In the entire year that I was gone, I talked to my family one time, and that was from when I was on R&R in Bangkok, Thailand. There were no telephones in Vietnam. There were no cell phones back then. It wasn't like you walked around. Okay, hold on. Let me pick up the phone and make a phone call back. Now they can actually call on cell phones. But when I was in Bangkok, Thailand, you had to go to the post office, and you went to the post office today. Let's say it was a Friday, and they would give them all the information. They would tell you, come back tomorrow at this time, and we'll have the call ready for you within a half hour. So you had to go back a day later. And when you got in, there was a phone booth. You also saw a phone booth. And when you got in that phone booth, they had the salt and pepper shaker where they turn it upside down the last 3 minutes. Well, the guy says to me, he says, Greg, when you get in there, you're going to have a connection to your family back in the Mayfair section of the city. But I'm going to turn this thing. You only got 3 minutes. So if you want to talk to your father, your mother, your girlfriend, everybody, you better make it quick. Because in 3 minutes, no matter what you're saying, that call is going to disconnect. So it's pretty, that was the only time I ever talked to him. So I did get to talk to my mom, my stepfather, my sister, Michaeline. My girlfriend, Donna, who is now my wife, she stayed over the night before at my house, thinking that she'd be, but then the call didn't get through one time. She had to leave and go to work, so I missed her. That hurt. But
so you were dating your current
yes,
wife,
my current wife. I had when I came out of Father Judge in 1965. I met Donna in February of 1966 at a local dance in the Mayfair section of the city, about a mile down the road from Father Judge High School. Then I got drafted 3 months later, so we dated for a couple of months. But I don't think that we ever would have got married. Now in that sense, that's I always said that's one of the good things about the military, because I was only 19, she was only 17, so we met at a dance. So then we dated for a couple of months, and then I got business. I was going for a couple of years, but she always communicated with me, which was nice for the whole time.
That helped you?
Yeah, that was big. Well, getting mail, getting back to the mail part of it, getting mail was important. It was great. Getting it home was kind of upsetting. And people always have a hard time relating this. It wasn't like we had a stationery store over there. We didn't have a stationery store. You might get some pieces of paper somehow, and you try to hope. But again, monsoons, they get wet, they get ruined, you throw them out. Your pens don't write. It wasn't like you had a pencil sharpener out in the jungle. So we would write this was upsetting to my mom and bothered me too, my sister. We got sea ration boxes, so we would write our letters or notes on the back of the sea ration box. So I'd write, doing okay. Just at least let them know that I'm alive. And you had to put stamps on it. You used to write up in the corner, free from Vietnam. Again, you couldn't have stamps. We didn't have postage. You went to a post office and bought stamps. You had no money on you. So we would, my mom would get upset. By the time that piece of cardboard made it, 13,000 miles from the jungles of Vietnam to the Mayfair section of Philadelphia, it would look kind of rough. Then that would be what my mom would get. So she would always get teared up.
Did she keep those?
Yeah, she did. She did. I saw a bunch of them when I got home. Yeah. It was kind of, she struggled big time with me being in Vietnam. She struggled in a major way. She had, again, cigarette and alcohol problems to begin with, but she struggled big time when I was over there.
I'm sure it was
Very difficult times.
Did you interact with civilian populations much
In
Vietnam?
in Vietnam, not really. Because we never saw them, but we saw the local people that lived in the hooches in Vietnam. That always felt bad for them. I mean, they have their thatched roof. And there's no running water. The floor's a bed of mud. It's difficult living. But
Was there a lot of mistrust especially after Marion? Was it hard to trust the civilians?
it was. You had to steer clear for the most part. If you could get a little bit of trust in them, you could try to do something to help them out. I always hated that sometimes they would send us on search and destroy missions, and this didn't happen too often. But luckily, in both cases, we never saw anybody. I was not an advocate of search and destroy missions. Just brutally kill innocent people and kids. I mean, I couldn't do that. I would not. I would never have done that.
Did you hear of that happening?
I heard of atrocities like that. Of course, the famous one was William Calley at My Lai Massacre. I would not have been an advocate of something like that. I don't know William Calley, so I'm not going to pass judgment on him. Speaking from a military perspective, I can defend him by saying the distress of war can get to you, and I can see where something like that could happen. But apparently, from what I'm reading and I've read, that there were a lot of other people that helped him out. He didn't just kill everybody by himself. But there was a lot of other, so I can't believe. But then there's a part of me, for example, well, I'll go back to that day Marion was killed. I think I could have killed anybody that day, but I got over it as time went on. So I only tell people it's hard for me to give you an honest answer. You'd have to be there. I don't know what I would have done in the same situation if I'd have been with William Calley's people. I don't like to think I would have killed. I don't think I would have killed innocent ladies and children. I don't think I would, but I don't know. I wasn't there, so I'm glad I wasn't there. I don't know what I would have done.
What were the biggest threats on these missions, like you described? Have it been booby traps or ambushes?
Yeah, both. Ambushes were. They're both bad. It was brutal, and of course they had such an enormous advantage over us because we were fighting on their turf. Again, you're talking. You're talking young guys that say myself come again with the Converse sneaks and the Madrid shorts and the wide open spaces and basketball courts, and you put me on an airplane, you put me 13,000 miles away in the middle of a jungle. I was never even a Boy Scout, so and that's one of the reasons. Like to this day, I don't go in the jungles. I don't like to go up even up the mountains. Or if we have friends who live up the mountain, I don't like to go up there. I might go up once in a while, but I don't like it because it always reminds me of Vietnam. Although it is much prettier up there. But the fear of booby traps was big. Booby traps were big, but ambushes were big too. And they always had. I always felt like they had such a territorial advantage on us because they knew the lay of the land.
And they chose to fight too, right?
When you hear something about the Tet Offensive, which started in January of 1968. I was a little bit lucky that I left in October of '67. I missed that. But to orchestrate that in all those cities, in all those towns, all over, I mean, it took a lot of work. While the Americans are bombing you and shooting at you, and, they didn't have any airplanes, and anything that flew in Vietnam, if it was in the air, it was American. Helicopters, jets, airplanes was all us.
Were you ever exposed to Agent Orange?
Agent Orange was I didn't know I was, but I mean I was exposed at that time. I would have, in 1966 and 67, I would have told you I was exposed. We thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. We'd go by an area where we were going to have to go in the next day or next couple of days, and all of a sudden everything, oh, nah, look, it's great. You can see it. Helicopters can land. There's nothing there. Where'd all the vegetation go? Well, you didn't know when you're 19 years old. You don't know about chemicals and Agent Orange and chemical agent in Agent Orange called dioxin, how dangerous that stuff is. But you don't know about that when you're 19 years old.
Have you had any health-related problems?
I've had a heart issue when I retired. Let me say this: I've had some issues, but what I would call normal issues for someone my age. For someone my age, I had when I retired, I got an atrial fibrillation. My heart was racing. I had to have a couple procedures done, but I cannot directly attribute that to Agent Orange. So I can't honestly say that I've had anything attributable to Agent Orange. I have not had prostate cancer. I have not had diabetes. These are all assumed diseases, but on the sicknesses on the VA list. So I've been blessed enough, and I don't want to get them. I don't have any issues that I know of relative to Agent Orange. Now there are some people that might tell you I have plenty of issues in my head, but not.
It sounds like you're very fortunate in some ways.
Very blessed. Very. I'm sitting here, so trust me. I'm very blessed to be able to be here.
I mean, I'll probably always leave the interview and wish I had asked a question, but I've asked most of my Vietnam-related questions. Is there anything during the war, your year in Vietnam, that you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Nothing in particular. We talked about the Harry Marion case. Again, I was very. It was a year like no other. It was. I can tell you that. It was unfortunate that I had to go there. Had I known then what I know now, I think I still would have probably gone. I don't know. I kiddingly tell people if I'd have known then what I know now, I might be a Canadian citizen, but I know I wouldn't have ever done that. I wouldn't have run away. I would have asked them maybe to give me a different job, maybe make me a clerk typist in Korea, like I asked you to make me, not an infantry foot soldier in South Vietnam. But nothing in particular. It was a brutal year, and it's a long time ago. Fortunately, with that, as I would say, I think maybe that DUI that I had in 2012 was the best thing ever happened to me, because it hooks me up with the VA. It hooks me up with an American Legion post, with a VFW post. It hooks me up with the ability to talk to people like yourself. Nobody would ever interview me before. Nobody would even want to talk to me when I came home. They just treated me like I was a communicable disease or something. So,
can we talk about that a little bit? What was it like coming home? Did you fly in an airplane? Did you go back to Philadelphia?
Yeah, I flew home. When my year was up, I got out on time, and thank God, because I would. They made me an offer. I had 6 months to go when when I got done and my year was up. They made me an offer. I had 6 months to go back in the States, that if I would stay for 30 more days, they were a little short on troops. If I would agree to stay for 30 more days, they would waive my last 5 months. So I could stay 30 more days and then go home right out of Vietnam and not have to do the last 5 months. But I said, no, I can't. Again, I only weighed 126 pounds. I was I was a basket case.
Did you? I hear about soldiers in Vietnam, especially kind of counting the days. Did you count the days?
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah.
Does that seem a little bit like how people in prison will count the days too? Is there similarities there?
I don't know. I never. I'm not sure what they do in prison. I never spent enough time. I was only a 24-hour wonder in prison. Thank God. And that was as long. That's the longest 24 hours of my. It was one of the worst 24 hours of my life. But no, we counted days. It couldn't go fast enough. But when my year was up, I was able to get out of there. We flew. They took us down to Cam Ranh Bay. We flew to Tokyo, Japan. Then we flew to Fort Lewis in Seattle, Washington. Got home on a Saturday night. They did some good things. They had seamstresses there, or tailors, whatever they call them. So they put clothes on us that fit us, because the clothes I wore over there were real baggy on me now. So that looked, so you didn't look like a bag the next day when your parents saw you. But anyhow, I went to they let us go to the bar. And while they were doing all this, before our red-eye flight left Seattle and then flew to Philadelphia. And I asked the guy for I don't know what they had back then, Valentine beer, whatever it was. And here he asked how long it was. I said, I'm 20. And I couldn't get served in the state of Washington. I said, oh man, this is great, because I wasn't 21 yet. But so anyhow, we got on a plane, and I landed at like 9:26 in the morning on a Sunday morning. Landed back in Philly, and there were war protesters at the airport. My sister was really upset. She was there with my stepfather. They picked me up at the airport, and it was good to be home. I remember kissing the ground when we landed at Fort Lewis in Seattle, Washington. It was the slowest moving year of my life. They see now that I'm retired and getting older, they seem to be going real fast. Back that one went real slow that year. But I was very blessed. Yeah, I got out. I didn't get hurt. A couple little dings and dongs and during the year, but nothing major. Nothing. And you need luck. I don't care how good. I always tell people I survived in Vietnam. 10 or 15%, because I was a real good soldier. I was in tremendous physical condition, but and the other 85% was luck, and you need luck. I mean, why I always go back to why those bullets hit Harry Marion in the front and didn't hit Greg Nini in the back. I'll never know that. I can't answer that one.
So after you came home, had you noticed that something had changed about you? How did you reintegrate?
Yeah, it was a little difficult. I struggled a little bit. Like, for example, like when we lived on Common Avenue. Like when I went in my bedroom to go, I closed the door. Like nobody would ever open the door. They did. They were always afraid of what they'd see on the other side of the door. So even my own family, to a certain extent, they're not sure how to handle you. I remember my sister saying, "Boy, you were like a wreck. You were in the car coming home from the airport, and all you kept on moving back and forth like this. You kept on looking around. But you always think somebody's trying to hurt you. In Vietnam, you're always looking around. I do that to this day. When I go into a room, this is 52 years later. When I sit in a room, I have to sit over in a corner so I can see. I can't sit and stand in the middle of the crowd. I have to sit in a corner and so I can see everything. Not that I think anybody there is dangerous or has a gun, or I still do it. So you just learn to watch your back or cover yourself, and I still do it 52 years later. But
did you ever abuse alcohol or drugs?
No drugs. I did some marijuana. Marijuana was not big when I was in high school from 61 to 65. I never, and again, I went to a big school with 4,000 boys. I never, we smoked some cigarettes, but I never saw anybody smoke marijuana. I don't think marijuana was quite there yet. First time I ever did it was in Vietnam. You could get it over there. I don't know what grade it was, but then too many guys were using it. The guys were messing up, and guys were falling asleep on guard duty, and it got so what they did, they put our platoon on a Chinook, which is a big helicopter, holds 30, 40, 50 guys, and they took us back to, because most of us said, oh, hey, look, if we get all messed up on marijuana, maybe it'll send us home. Because at this point, I'd rather be in jail back home than be on the battlefield of Vietnam. But they blew our socks off. They said, you guys think you're going to smoke marijuana and get out of the field and be sent home? No, you'll be sent home maybe in a body bag, but you're not going home on an airplane. But so we kind of had an unwritten rule out in the field: no more smoking marijuana and stuff like that. Guys, when you're on guard duty at night, the other guys are supposed to be sleeping, getting some rest. But then there was guys. There was LSD. I think it was LSD, sugar cube or something. I'm not real familiar with it. There was some of that going on. Guys would get it sent to them from the States. I saw a couple of guys say that messed them up. They got messed up big time on that. So
after coming home?
We did a pretty fair amount of drinking when I was at Fort Meade, Maryland. They didn't bother us too much. They left the Vietnam guys alone. We only had 6 months to go. One night we go to Washington D.C. and have fun. The next night we go to Baltimore, Maryland, and have fun. And so they pretty much left us alone. We didn't have any activity until April of 1968. I get out in May, so I was there from November. Came home from Vietnam in October. Went to Fort Meade in say December of '67 to May of '68. Well, in April of '68, Martin Luther King was killed, so I had to go to the riots in Washington D.C. That was kind of. I only had 30 days to go. That was kind of bad, but not that there was. I only heard 1 or 2 shots fired. It was mostly the rioters. There was a 7 o'clock patrol where you had to go to bed at curfew, but it was mostly the younger generation trying to burn down the Pentagon and the White House, and that so the Marines had them encircled, and the Army guys were walking the streets and making sure there was a lot of looting and stuff like that when King was killed. That was a problem. But again, not real bad. Real bad because I only had 30 days to go, and I didn't need a civil war in my life at this point in time.
Sure.
But
so after you came home, did you marry? What was your
no, let's see. Well, I came home. I get done the service in May of 1968. Don and I started dating again. I'm out of the service as of May of '68. I got a job. Getting a job, I'll make a point about that, was very difficult. And I'll tell you one particular incident. Again, I remember it's like it happened this morning. I couldn't get a job. Nobody wanted to know me. Nobody wanted anything. So my brother-in-law says to me, he says, "You want to steal cars?" He works for GMAC. He was a repossessor for GMAC. So I said, I'll repossess anything. I just want to get a paycheck. So I interviewed right in Philadelphia for a big company, GMAC, a finance company. And I went down, and I won't mention any names, but the particular person's name, she said, when I went in for the interview, she said, "What have you been doing with this?" I said, "Well, I've been in the military for a couple of years, in the Army." She goes, "Were you in Vietnam? Were you overseas? Were you in Vietnam?" I said, "Yes, I was in Vietnam for a year." So I spent a year in the States, a year in Nam, and and 6 months in the States, a year in Nam, 6 months in the States. And she says, "Listen, when you fill out the app, just put U.S. Army 2 years, 1966 to 1968. Don't put nothing about Vietnam." And I never ever forgot that. I often thought if I didn't need a job so desperately, if I had any money, I'd have told her to keep her job. But anyhow, I did fill out the paperwork. I did get the job. That's how I got my first job after the service, repossessing cars for GMAC. I did that for 15 years. Not repossessing cars for 15 years, but I worked for them for 15 years. And then I became a finance manager in the car business. I was the guy that you saw after you bought the car. Do you want to lease it, pay cash for it, finance it? And then I worked for Citizens Bank for my last 12 or 13 years. So starting out, if my brother-in-law would have said to me, "Do you want to lay hardwood floors?" I'd have been a floor maker. "You want to lay asphalt on?" I'd have done that out in the streets. I could have done a lot of different things. But he said to me, "You want to repossess cars?" And I parlayed that into a 46-year career in the automobile finance and the car business and the auto finance business. So I always had a job. Never made a ton of money, but I was always able to have a job. And then I got a great part-time job in 1972, the year my son was born. I'm a big sports fan. A buddy of mine says to me, he says, "You want to referee sports and make some money?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll do anything to make. I need money." I was married at that time. My son was about to be born. So I started officiating athletics, hardball, baseball games, kids basketball games, football games. And here it is 46 years later, and I still do it. Not nearly to the extent that I used to, but I still officiate girls softball games, co-ed softball games, kids basketball games, and rough touch football games. And since 1972, I've been doing it.
Sounds like you know how to make the best out of the situation.
Well, I've been lucky. I've always been aggressive as far as that. And, I always wanted to have a nice home, and always wanted to have my son was very, very blessed. Our one son, he's 46 years old. We were very blessed in this area. He happened to have a lot. I don't know where he got all his brains at, but he went to a prep school not far from here called Holy Ghost Prep, and then he went on to a small, excuse me, a small liberal arts college outside of Philadelphia called Swarthmore College, and then he went on to the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School and got a doctorate degree. and today he's a professor at Drexel University. So that was our only child. So we did something right. We educated a smart young man, and we did it because he was good in the classroom. He wanted to learn, and I would always tell my wife, I said, if he wants to learn like that, money's no issue. We need to spend all the money we can towards gearing him to the world of academics, and in the end, it worked out great. So he lives out in Wynwood, Pennsylvania now, not too far from here, and he's got two lovely daughters, which gives my wife and I two lovely granddaughters, Hannah and Emmy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, in this almost 50-year time span between coming home in 1968 and
Right,
2012,
yep.
whenever you got the DUI, had there been any type of episodes related to PTSD that you can think of?
Nothing off the wall. Maybe a couple instances where, or maybe I had a few too many cocktails and somewhere, or got in an argument with my wife or something. But nothing bad. Nothing involving the law or the police, or maybe a couple speeding tickets over the last 50 years. But nothing major that I could ever address. I always felt with the PTSD, it was maybe that ability to not go out in public or shun the public or always stand in a corner, like the stuff I never did when I was younger. I've always had a kind of an outgoing personality, and I still like to think that I do. I won't avoid people that want to talk or be friendly or things like that. I've gotten in the habit of avoiding trouble. If I think something's going to be troublesome or an issue, I'm the type that would avoid it rather than go become an aggressor about it. That's one of the reasons I think I've done well as an official. I always felt like my job was to mediate the situation, not throw fuel onto the situation as an official. And I try to do that in life too. If it looks like it's going to be a problem, avoid it. Stay away from it. Don't go instigate it.
Have you ever been to the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C.?
Many times. Matter of fact, I was just down there about 3 weeks ago. What I do, I go to. Yes, I have been there to come off the cup. I'd say 7 or 8 times over the years.
When was the first time you went?
Probably a couple months after it was first built. Yeah, at one time or other, I've at least touched the 27 guys that were killed at my high school, from my high school. Most recently, when I was down there, Harry Marion, I had his name etched or resurfaced, or as they call it, scripted, and I sent it to his family. They really appreciated that because, of course, most of them live out on the West Coast. Very, very emotional, very moving, tremendous memorial in a town where things are high, large, and white. It's low and black and dark, and rightfully so. It just fits. I think the memorial was very, very well done. Very, very well done. So I tried to get down, especially this time, because most of the guys that I knew are in their 50-year bracket, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52 years. So I've done a lot of commemorating, and while I'm there, I'll go over to Arlington. I'll stop at Arlington and see a couple of the guys that I know are over there.
Can you tell me about your role in the Veteran Court?
As Veterans Court, I am a mentor. The reason I am a mentor is because Judge Dugan, who I met, he runs Veterans Court. Judge Patrick Dugan, very good man, very good judge, very fair judge, and I can tell you, he has, without a doubt. Again, I don't want to ever speak for him, but he has the best interests of those vets at hand, in his mind. He does whatever he can do to help them. He does a great job. But I met him through Veterans Court. I was there probably over a year, almost 18 months. And every 60 to 90 days, I would go back. My wife would get down, and they would get progress reports on what I was doing. the Veterans Court's a good thing.
So let me ask you something. You lasted 50 years after coming back home without major issues, and you got a DUI, and so you
In 2012, yeah.
and you got into the court. It's an 18-month program. You could have just paid a fine or did your time. Why did you stick it out? What was beneficial?
Well, by going through Veterans Court, which I didn't know any of that. I never even heard of Veterans Court. Again, when I was locked up, when I was in jail, they were asking me if I was, they wouldn't let me out. And of course, they have to, they have to know, can they release you on your own recognizance? Are you a real human being? Do you have a life? Do you have a job? If we let you out of here, do you have a family to go to? And all of which I did. And so they let me go, and then they started, or before they let me go, they started asking me all kinds of military questions. Were you ever in the service? And I'm thinking, I didn't. Of course, I was being brilliant. I just want to get out of there. Well, I'm saying, what do these people care what I did in the service? They're asking me about Vietnam. Was I ever in Vietnam? Was I here? Here, they were trying to find out if I was qualified to go to Veterans Court. That's which I didn't know that. So they told me, your next court date, you go to 13th and Filbert in the city, which is Philadelphia Veterans Court. And then they sent me to the VA, which is the 39th in Woodland, to be assessed. But so it worked out well, the Veterans Court thing. That's how I met Judge Dugan. I was there for about 18 months. They wanted me to go to classes. This was my treatment at the VA every Thursday at 5 o'clock. But to do that, I had to leave my job at 3 o'clock. It's a long way from where I worked to Southwest Philadelphia. So I talked to my boss, and we were trying to locate and work. Plus, the last thing I wanted to do was lose my job. And then we didn't want the other employees to say, well, where's Greg going? Was he getting special treatment? So I said to the young lady at the VA, I said, if it's possible, I said, I'll do anything to make this go away. I said, I'll put on an orange jumpsuit and sweep the streets, or clean up 95, clean up trash. So she said, give me a week and we'll call you back. So they ended up, they appealed to Judge Dugan and the court. He said, look, the guy could lose his job if we make him do this. And they didn't want that. They don't wait. They're not there to help you lose your job. I don't want to take this problem that I have now. I already totaled my car. I got to buy a brand new car. The wife's all mad at this and mad at that. And the whole world hates me. Now I'm going to now I'm going to come home and tell her I lost my job. But anyhow, so they let me. What they did, they let me go to AA classes twice a week for about 18 months. I'd never been to an AA class before, but I didn't realize there were AA classes everywhere. So it was very easy to do that. I was able to go one on a Sunday afternoon. You can go to midnight, to 2 in the morning, anytime. And then every 9 days, I had to go back before the Judge Dugan, and show him the list of the meetings I was at and the name of the person that signed for the meeting. So it worked out good. But by doing that, the DUI, it never went in the newspaper. I never paid a fine. I never lost my license, which is standard to lose your license. There was all kinds of advantages. There's just three of them right there. Not going in the newspaper was nice. Not paying a fine. I didn't pay an attorney, because if you can pay an attorney if you want to, but if not, they'll give you the public defenders down there. That's what they don't pay them. They have, that's their job. They get paid by the city or whoever, but the mentee doesn't pay them. So I could have got a free attorney. I had a buddy of mine who handled my case. He took care. He wouldn't take any money. He wouldn't take any money anyhow. But essentially, he didn't really have to do too much, because the court dictates. Judge Dugan dictates. But any mentee that goes through Veterans Court is still entitled to, if he wants to pay an attorney, you can do that. But you don't have to. They'll get you a public defender for nothing.
But you also, with the VA, you got PTSD.
Right. Well, as a result of going to I had to go to the VA to get assessed, and I'd never been to the VA, so I go there, and I filled out the paperwork, and the young girl, she was very nice. She says, she's looking at it, and she says to me, Greg, you put on the app, this is a true story. She says, you put on the app that you were in Vietnam, and you were 11B10 infantry, and you were there for a year, but you don't collect any disability money. And I said, why would I collect disability for what? And she starts talking about PTSD and Agent Orange and all that kind of stuff, none of which I knew about. But nobody ever told me about it either. So anyhow, long story short, she says to me, she was really nice. She said, "Come back next week. I'm going to make an appointment for you. I'm going to come back. She said, I'm going to fill out some paperwork for you, and we're going to get the ball rolling." And as a result of that, I got hooked up with the VA, which I never would have known. I got a 30% disability for PTSD and trauma experiences in Vietnam. I've since gotten an additional 10% for hearing, so now I'm up to 40%. None of which I would have ever known, would have never known in a million years had I not gotten the DA, which got me to jail, which got me to 12th and Filbert with Judge Patrick Dugan in Veterans Court, which got me to the VA Medical Center at 39th and Woodland. I never would have known any of this. No, the Army never told me, and I never asked either. I mean, I figured I worked. I had a job. I had my arms, my legs, and I wasn't looking for anything. I was just happy. I still say to this day, I'm just happy to be able to sit here. Just happy to be alive. But it worked out great. You know, I've met a lot of nice people through the VA. Doctors, MDs, psychiatrists, Ph.D, psychiatrists, psychologists, guys that were in Vietnam. I go to some Vietnam events now. I'll go to a military type parade. I told you I flew to Harry's cemetery in Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno, California. I joined the VFW I belong to. I joined the American Legion. I bought a hat like this. I would have never in a billion years worn a hat like this before 2012. Never. Simply because I just didn't want to talk about it, you know. Because when I first came back, it was like if I did, everybody just hates your guts. And you can't even put it on your job application. So nobody wanted to talk about it. And then there was a part of me that felt like there's no sense in me talking about it because nobody's going to believe me anyhow. Nobody could imagine what it's like. You know, you have to go there to see it and walk through it to believe what it's like. I said, if they don't believe me, they're either not going to believe me or they're not going to understand. No, and I understand. I'm cool with that. But
So, what led to your decision to become a mentor?
when I got done at my 18 months, they have the graduation from Veterans Court, and they give you like a little Philly soft pretzel, a little coin, a Veterans Court coin. And what I do with that coin, I taped it. It's taped to the dashboard, to the front of my car, just above the radio. So that if I am, because I still do have some cocktails, and I still drive, but I don't drink and drive. But if I do drink and I happen to get in my car, the first thing I see is that coin, and that's my reminder. Get out of the car and call Lyft or call Uber or call you or call anybody, but don't walk. Thumb it, but don't drive. So I learned my lesson. It was a bad experience, a very embarrassing experience. But hindsight being 2020, I can look you in the eye and say it might have been the best thing ever happened to me. A lot of people, my sisters and family, has said that it might have been the best thing ever happened to me for a lot of reasons.
So you've been able to take something bad that happened to you and help other people too. Right?
Absolutely, Judge Dugan.
Talk about that.
Yeah, Judge Dugan. When it was done, that's how I actually got to become a mentor. He said to me, he asked me, I remember he said to me, he said, "Greg, do me a favor." When it was all done, he says, "When you retire," because I was still working at that time. When you retire in a couple of years, come back here to Veterans Court and become a mentor and help me out. He says, "I got to read on you. You're a nice guy that screwed up one night." He says, I got some vets here, the young guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and he said they're messed up, they're hurting bad, a lot of them. So he said we need help down here in Veterans Court, and that's the reason. When I retired, about a month later, I called. He gave me a number to call, and I never lost it. And I said, "My name's Greg Nini, and I'd like to become a mentor." And it was relatively easy. You know, they did a little background check on you, stuff like DD 214, stuff like that, of which they all had from when I was in Veterans Court. They had all those records, so it works out well. So I get in every Thursday, and I can help out. I don't. It's not a lot. You know, I mean, you're not getting paid. It's a volunteer type thing, but I do enjoy it. I do that on Thursdays, and my other volunteer job on Tuesdays. There's a state-run VA home on Southampton Road, Southampton and the Boulevard, right in Philadelphia. That there are vets there from World War. They live there permanently. World War II. There's still some World War II guys there. A lot of Korean guys. A lot of Vietnam guys. And I do physical therapy with them on Tuesday mornings from 8 to 12. And then on Thursdays I do Philadelphia Veterans Court from 8:30 to 12. And I enjoy both of those jobs. Both they don't interfere with the weekends, the nights, or anything like that. But I enjoy them both. They both involve the military. Again, something I would not have done before 2012.
Sure.
So,
what do you think makes a good mentor?
I like to say one who listens. Doesn't talk too much. He listens all. Listen to the mentee. I don't ask them a lot of questions, but I do give them the assurance. And I tell them like this: I don't know what you did to get here. So I don't care what you did. It's none of my business whether you had a DUI or you tried to buy a gun or committed an offense. I don't think there's no offenses there with a gun, using a gun. I don't think they're allowed in Veterans Court, but I think maybe some guys have tried to buy them or things like that. But it could have been beating up your girlfriend or abuse of your girlfriend or something like that, or theft, or there's all kinds of reasons why guys are, and girls, there's girls there too coming through Veterans Court. But I feel like I give them the assurance that if you do what you're told, whatever you did to get you here will go away. That's all. Not much else. And I give them my card. We all have our business cards. And I tell them you can call me 24/7. I said, call me. There's a good possibility. I always don't remember, I'm not an attorney. I'm not your lawyer. I'm not not an MD. I'm definitely not an MD or a lawyer. But I said, if whatever your question is, if I can't answer it, I will find the person that can answer it. And it's most of the guys are pretty good. And again, I've had guys go all the way through the system. They graduated. And I to this day don't know how they got there, what they did. I don't ask them. If they do what they're told, it usually goes away. I think that's a great thing, and it's a one-shot deal. That's I always remember Judge Dugan saying that. Don't think because you served in the military, you can just do whatever you feel like doing all over the city of Philadelphia. But there are some good stories there. Guys that have really been a mess and have turned it around.
Do you think that there is a relationship between trauma and incarceration?
Best answer I could give, I would say that there's a strong possibility that there could be, but I can't say from myself. Like I've heard stats that there's a large percentage of trauma people from the Vietnam War that are in prison. But again, I don't know that for a fact, so I don't like to answer that because I don't know it for a fact. But my opinion would say that there could be that many of the guys who came home from Vietnam and did serious crimes and maybe say graded for prison. They're not there for an hour, for a day like I was. They're there for the rest of their lives. That there's a strong possibility that could have started been a result of Vietnam. But again, I don't know that for a fact, so I don't want to say that as factual information.
Thank you.
That's a tough one.
If you had advice to give veterans who are coming home from Afghanistan, what would it be?
Absolutely, positively, get hooked up with the VA. Even if you think you're perfect, and you're not everybody that comes back is a train wreck. But nowadays, I think the system is such that if you are coming back as a train wreck or really messed up, you will get hooked up with the VA. During Vietnam, we should have got hooked up at least to get a physical, at least to get sign your name, or I remember I came back, they gave us malaria pills for falciparum or Vivex malaria. Said take these for 30 days and see you later. Appreciate your tip. That was pretty much it. And that was it. They didn't owe me anything else, but they should have hooked us up with the VA and said for the first couple of years that you're back, at least go to the VA once a year and get it physical. But I would advise the young men to come back nowadays to get hooked up with the VA, one way or the other, even if you think there's nothing wrong with you. But if you were a combat soldier, I definitely would say you get hooked up with the VA because they can do so many things. The system is good. The system's overwhelmed. I'm not saying it's perfect. I've had situations where they wanted me to get testing for my hearing. They made me go up to almost up to New York City, over 100 miles away. But I went. I didn't argue and fight. I just went and did it up there, and it worked out okay. But the system's overwhelmed. But to answer the question specifically, get hooked up with the VA when you come back.
Thank you for that. How do you feel whenever people thank you for your service?
Well, it's a long time coming. The Vietnam War, I say it's a long time coming. I'll speak for Vietnam veterans. That you weren't thought too much of when you came back, but that wasn't everybody. Not everybody thought they were low lives that came back from Vietnam. But society, in my mind, America knows that they made a huge mistake with the Vietnam War. The big mistake they made, they mistook the warrior for the war. I didn't make Vietnam happen. I'm just a small, teeny one guy who went there and got lucky and was lucky enough to come back, and lucky enough 52 years later to be able to sit here and talk about it. I can tell you 58,000 plus guys and 8 females that wish they were sitting in a seat able to do the same thing, but they can't. And that's the sad part of it. But it's just difficult. The whole thing was a mess. It was a very difficult situation.
How do you understand patriotism?
I'll speak for the older generation. I think the older generation, I'll say 15 and older, 16 and older, the Vietnam era guys were very, very patriotic, very patriotic. I have some concerns about the younger generation. I don't know what age to put that into. Maybe, I don't know, 18 to 30, or 40 years younger than me, 40, 50 years younger than me. I'm a little concerned about, I think that patriotism might be going away. I think the younger generation would rather protest a war than go to a war. At least that's what I feel. Maybe that's right. That's just my opinion. I think that would be a little bit of a concern. I don't think the patriotism is what it used to be years ago.
Has your experience in Vietnam changed the way that you see the United States' role in the world?
A little bit. I think not so much the Vietnam part. What am I trying to say here? I used to feel when I was younger, when my wife and I traveled, like let's say we were maybe in the Caribbean, or we've been to China, we've been to Alaska. Well, that's American, but Europe, many places in Europe, and I always had a feeling that, like, we're the Americans. We run the show around here. Not the Chinese or the Japanese or this country or that country. We're the lead dog, and I still feel that way, but I just don't say it because globally that doesn't fly anymore. That's the way I feel. I mean, I still feel that we're a very, very powerful country, very highly thought of around the world. I mean, everybody seems to want help from us when they're in trouble. But I don't brag about that as much as I used to when I'm on foreign soil. I will when I'm an American. Does that make sense? I don't want to, because maybe you don't go to China and tell them how powerful you are in Americans, things like that. I won't brag about it like I used to, because I don't, especially now that I'm older, I'm with my wife. I don't want to look for trouble. But in my heart of hearts, I still feel that way. I just don't brag about it as much.
Well, before I get to my concluding questions, is there anything throughout this interview that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked, or you wanted to go back to?
I do not. I'm good. I'm good with.
I always ask that question.
I do appreciate it. I appreciate it.
9 times out of 10, the answer is no, but that 1 out of 10 times is always usually really good.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked most of these. people to learn based on your experiences. It doesn't have to be about Vietnam, it can be life in general.
Life in general, work hard. You need some luck. Cross your fingers because you need some luck. You need some lucky breaks, whether it's health wise, money wise, or you don't have to have a lot of money, but just enough money to at least get your bills paid. My wife and I have been blessed in that area. We don't have a lot of money, but our bills were always paid. If I would have had to get another job, I'd have had another job to make sure they were paid. But to answer the question, I would say be a nice person and be more concerned about what you can do to help someone else versus what they can do to help you. I'm a real believer in that. My wife sometimes gets upset with me. She says I overkill that factor. I said don't worry about what anybody can do for Greg Nini. I'll worry about what I can do for somebody else. That's a personal feeling. Yes.
And this is a similar question, but different. How do you want to be remembered?
As a nice person. As a nice person. I knew a guy. I'll tell you quick one. His name was Joe Hannon. I met him. He worked at GMAC. I was not a close personal friend of mine, but over the years I got to know him fairly well, and everybody liked Joe Hannon. He was just a nice personality. And I often say, if I could come back, he passed away, I'll see, 5-6 years ago. If I could get back and be like somebody else, personality-wise, I'd want to be like Joe Hannon. Like everybody knew Joe Hannon, everybody liked Joe Hannon. I always say if I can come back and be like somebody, let it be Joe Hannon. If I can come back and look like somebody, let it be John Kennedy Jr.
Fair enough. Well, Mr. Nini, I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for your service not only in the military but to helping other people in general. I think that's for me what a patriot is.
Jason, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with me. It was an honor to learn from you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.